Similarly to yesterday's video, we have so much to go over today. It is unbelievable how much we're going to be talking about in this video. We're going to be going over our tropical storm Brett, which is now formed, so named storm number 2 there, as it goes in alphabetical order. So we are now on B. And we also have a storm expected to develop right behind it in our MDR, which is short for Main Development Region. So we're going to be going over that alongside our regularly scheduled video where we go over the European model, the storminess across the United States, and really it's going to ramp up big time, and we're going to be talking about those historically cold temperatures as well. We can see, looking at Brett, that Brett has developed not only a very large area of high convection, we can see this rotating area in here. If you watch very closely right in that circle, you will see that rotation taking place. This storm does have something going on, and it's either some shear or some dry air that's been able to make its way into the storm. But we can see these areas in here towards the end. It looks like this area here and this area here, where there is some dry air where you can see through the satellite imagery down to the ocean there, and that is a sign of a little bit of some unhealthiness within the storm there. We can see more convection here on this western and this eastern end of things. I said that in the wrong order, but yeah. We can see on the east and west side, there is some storminess, and then the north side and the south side are the more unhealthy areas. So this storm is going to have some trouble, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. Here is that kind of disturbance behind it, and we can see that this one has really lost a lot of its convection. There is some nice rotation going on, and development is expected with this one as well. So as we get into that cone forecast here, we can see that for Brett, now we don't expect a hurricane status anymore. And as you can see, it's a lot further south than originally expected. In yesterday's video, I talked about the fact that the further south this track goes, the more it's going to head into some more dry regions of the Caribbean. That southern Caribbean is a hurricane graveyard and tends to eat up storms. And we've seen a big time southern push in the model guidance and from this cone forecast from the National Hurricane Center. And I tend to agree that if we do get this southern track, we are going to see probably no hurricane status development from Brett, which is good news. As we move on to the 7-day outlook here, we can see not only Brett right there, but also we have a region of potential development right behind Brett, and that's an 80% chance of development. So not only do we have Brett, we might get our C storm very soon in this main development region. Again, looking a lot more like August or September rather than June. As we take a look at the 2-day graphical tropical weather outlook, we can see that tropical storm Brett there. We can see the satellite imagery underneath, very healthy looking storm, and right behind it, a 70% chance of development over the next 2 days. Crazy stuff. Now, we're going to get into our normal video, but we are going to be going over the spaghetti models and the intensity guidance for this storm in just a little bit. Both of those storms, actually, so stay tuned for that. As we take a look at our normal stuff that we normally take a look at, by this evening, we can see insane amounts of rainfall taking place for the southeast, and this is going to start to pile up over the next couple of days. By tomorrow afternoon, we could see a low pressure center is set up over eastern North Carolina, and that is creating heavy raininess and just overall bad storminess there for those areas and across the rest of the southeast as well. As we take a look here at the northwest, the north central there, we can see lots and lots of precipitation in this area as well. As we move on towards Thursday, we see for the entire coast, this is still taking place. And we also see this central United States region, again, seeing a little bit of a storm developing out there as well, which is eventually going to head eastward and actually become our next storm for the east. But still just these very heavy amounts up and down the coast. Still by Friday, flooding is obviously going to be a major concern. If you look day over day at this much precipitation, there's just no way around it. Flooding will for sure be a threat. Also, by Saturday, the 24th here, we can see from Florida up the coast, and especially there in the northeast, we have widespread storms. And then across this kind of north central into the Great Lakes area here, we also have storms developing through this area, kind of staying put. By the time we reach Sunday here on June 25th, we can see for the upper Midwest and the Great Lakes there, we also have this storm system kind of dipping down. And this is when it starts to make its trek eastward Monday into Tuesday. We're seeing this up and down the East Coast again. And this is going to put June at far above average precipitation amounts there for the East, for almost everybody from Florida all the way up through Maine. As we take a look at Wednesday here, that finally moves out on Wednesday the 28th. We begin to see this next system developing here across the plains, and it's becoming a lot more of a quicker flow, and we're seeing things move a little bit quicker. And by Thursday into Friday, that's going to be June 30th there, we are seeing another round of storms here for the central United States. Things are looking a little bit quieter finally here for the east, but all of this might be on its way again for that area. So really something to keep an eye on. And the main trend here is these areas up here seeing plenty of storms, and then again that southeast all the way up into the northeast, potential flooding with how much rain we see. Now the total rainfall here, no surprise that we are seeing just massive amounts, not only across this north central United States, where in the reds we expect 2 to 5 and the browns 5 to 10, but also this southeast all the way up through the northeast coast there. We anticipate again 2 to 5 in the reds there, and then the browns going to be 5 to 10 across South Carolina, North Carolina, and then down through Florida as well. Plenty of precipitation. Now, as we head on to the snowfall, we can see this is actually slowing down quite a bit. So finally seeing some of this die down, but it's still approaching July and we still have some snowfall left in the tank. The temperatures that are coming up is pretty cold in the east, pretty cold in the west. We begin to see a negative PNA pattern really take hold, which means that there's cold temperatures out in the west. Pacific North American Oscillation is what that stands for. So we have a negative oscillation happening here, and this is forcing the warm air up the central United States. But we really just continue to see this kind of cold blob here that does not want to move anywhere or really come to an end anytime soon. We are going to, in fact, see pretty much this cold hang on for the entire model run, and this has been the trend for the past few weeks. We've just continued to see this cold setup over this eastern region. As we reach towards Monday here, we can see finally maybe some warmer temperatures here for the later portion of June, but it doesn't last very long, and actually we see the blues pretty much return fairly quickly. And then by this point here around the early July timeframe, we have what is considered a positive PNA, again, Pacific North American Oscillation is what that stands for. And this would encourage the cold air into the east, where we've already had it, but now we have another factor basically encouraging that to take place. And that looks to stay the case pretty much through July 5th here, where we have warmer temperatures out west, cooler temperatures along the eastern seaboard there. And that is pretty much what we see happening here through the model run. Now let's get back into the tropics, where we have our cone forecast here, or not our cone forecast, spaghetti model guidance for Brett. And as you can see, there is a wide variety of models, and there still is these stragglers that want to take it up north through potentially into the Dominican Republic or Puerto Rico or even east of there. But the majority here, as you can see, take it straight into that southern Caribbean area, which is very dry, high shear, and going to really lead towards difficult conditions for this storm. And as we take a look at that next kind of system that we have behind Brett, we can see that this one looks to take more of a northern turn, pretty much north of the Caribbean. And odds are, if this does occur, is that it will kind of begin to curve back eastward, is typically what we expect to see. But rarely they do actually continue on more of a westward trek, and that would put the East Coast on high alert for this one behind Brett. It's called Invest 93L. As we take a look at the European ensemble model, we're seeing very similar things here, very far south with Brett. And as we move on to that next system, we see more of a northern turn here, even east of Bermuda, so far out to sea. It's mostly these ones that we'd want to look out for if it was to move more into here, where the East Coast, again, would be on high alert. The GFS model for Brett here is the furthest north, actually, out of all of our kind of main ensemble model groupings. And this one takes it pretty close to hitting Jamaica, but still this would be considered the Southern Caribbean and would not be ideal for development in there at all. The system behind, as you're kind of picking up on the trend, is more of a northern motion here on the GFS model as well. As we take a look at the Canadian for Brett, we see there is basically all of these very far southern ones, and then we have one taking it straight for New York City. Take that with a grain of salt for sure, and that is a big time straggler and outlier here on this model grouping for Brett. The Canadian model isn't very known for being good at this either, so take it all with a grain of salt. As we see for the one behind it, we see more of a directly towards Bermuda track from this one, so this is one of the more eastward storms here. Definitely some interesting motions happening here when you look at the kind of control line, which is kind of like the mean. It's just a little bit more doing its own thing, and you see it takes a little loop there. Same thing with the deterministic Canadian model. It's doing a little bit of a loop south of there. Very interesting. And then the mean average is something like this, taking a more westward turn, which would be a little bit concerning. But again, Canadian model, don't want to put too much stock into it here. Let's take a look at that intensity guidance. And as you can see for Brett, we're now thinking that hurricane status, even category 1, is going to be pretty hard to come by. And actually, we're probably going to stay at barely tropical storm status and then die off, is the expectation from almost all of these models. We will continue to update you guys daily as this storm persists, but this seems to be a big trend in a weaker direction, which is great news. Now that next system, we do see that there is 2 major groupings. One here is going to be south, or I always say south, but underneath tropical storm status and not really strengthening to there. And I'd say about 60% of these models do take it into tropical storm status, most of which even very strong tropical storm status, but we don't have any calling for a hurricane at this point. We're going to need to track this and watch it very closely. There is a lot of interesting things moving forward, and once this storm develops, we'll probably know a lot more about it. But we have 2 tropical systems to track right now in late June. Highly unusual, and probably puts more confidence on those that have been calling for a heavier and much more intense hurricane season. This is a trend in that direction for sure, and signs of things to come perhaps. Maybe time will tell. Anyway, be sure to like the video if you did like it. Subscribe for daily uploads just like this one. You can even hit the bell icon for daily notifications when we upload so you never miss one. Be sure to like the video if you did enjoy it. Leave a comment down below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.